I'm in Miami Garden with the Richard Mille plane. And we are back. You are chatting with John P. That rap lyric was actually a little excerpt by a popular rapper, called Polo G, and the song is Pop Out Again. It's actually pretty catchy. I'm a musician myself. Catchy little line there. It's kind of interesting. But that certainly goes to show how mainstream Richard Mille, not Millie, has become, and that's what we're talking about here on Chatting with John P. Today we're talking about the history of Richard Mille, along with some of the popular models, and what makes them so special. I think in the watch geek world, there's a lot of guys that kind of look down on them. I don't want to say necessarily because of the price tag, but certainly about usually the value place. So I think we might be able to change the opinion a little bit on that and talk about how much has been achieved by the brand in just 20 years. But on the wrist we have here is this ceramic bezel. For the one guy out there that complained I said full ceramic, it's not full ceramic. Ceramic bezel, Omega Seamaster, blue dial on a perfectly fitted rubber strap. Such a nice summer watch, and I'm wearing this thing very hard and heavy. Great sports watch to take out there for the summer months. So, do not forget to like and subscribe as well. I've molded this video by suggestion from viewers like you because apparently you like these history videos. So let's get into it. We're going to be talking about Richard Mille, the history, and all of that good stuff. Let's go. Richard Mille was born on February 13th, 1951 in Draguignan, France. As a young boy, he developed an affinity towards mechanics, automobiles, and watches. This laid the foundation for what was to come many years later. In his own words, "I have always been obsessed with mechanical devices. I love to discover new universes." In 1974, Richard began to work for a company called Finor that handled watchmaking. At first, he was a bit of a jack of all trades, handling a bit of all things in the business. Though, when the company was purchased by a French machinery business, Matra, Richard began to manage the entire watchmaking arm of the business. It's interesting to note that the French company Matra had a few modern sports car models, which perhaps was one of the great inspirations to the much later automobile-inspired Richard Mille watch lines. Years later, around 1992, Seiko began talks to purchase various parts of this watchmaking wing of the company Richard was working for, Matra. It was during this time that he took up a position at a renowned 1800s jewelry company, Mauboussin, to create a watch line. Building out the entire wing of the company for around 6 years, Richard decided that he did not like the direction of the company, even though he had equity stake in the watchmaking portion of the business. In the late 90s, he decided he would not work for another man's company, and he began concocting his own watch business plans. In late 1998, Richard paired up with his longtime friend Dominique Guinot and began creating the concepts behind the soon-to-be Richard Mille brand. This is a time period that most of the history books really do not speak of in Richard Mille until 2001, including their own website. The brand, then unnamed, was modeled after aeronautics, cars, and sailing, and was pitched to various partners, including many watchmaking houses in Switzerland. Audemars Piguet would be the brand that would bite off on this partnership, though on the back end without publicly an official advertisement to make this apparent. On October 23, 2001, the Richard Mille brand was named and filed in the Swiss Registry of Commerce. Shortly thereafter, the Richard Mille watch collection is officially launched to the public at the 2001 Basel World. The watch, the first RM model, was the RM001 Tourbillon limited to 17 pieces, of course the RM1. This watch featured a then unique tonneau-shaped case that fit the wearer's wrist ever so well. This, mixed with the solid, durable, and rugged case that displayed the entire movement front and back, won over the vast majority of the viewers at this particular Basel World Fair. This caliber featured manual winding tourbillon movement with hours, minutes, power reserve, and torque indicators. The funny thing is, Richard himself threw the watch on the ground to show the future retailers how unique, special, and rugged this tourbillon was. Crazy, right? Interestingly enough, also in 2014, when an Indonesian military commander threw his Richard Mille on the floor and laughed, he was actually criticized very harshly. Nonetheless, at that Bezel World, orders began pouring in. From 2001, the brand mostly produced manually wound tourbillon watches in unique style with precious materials until about 2004, when the brand launched their first automatic model, the RM5. This featured a titanium base plate. It is said that many plates were thrown away due to production errors because of the grossly difficult methods that were utilized to create them. Remember, titanium in watchmaking was at its infancy in 2004. Richard Mille believed in paving the way. 2004 also marks the real defining point in the Richard Mille brand, where they strongly invested in partnerships with celebrities, specifically sports figures. The RM6 tourbillon was released, which was named after Felipe Massa, an F1 race car driver. The story is told that he wanted a lightweight, rugged, and durable watch to wear while driving his race car. Though, honestly, I'm not believing that, because in that case, why would he wear a tourbillon? Nonetheless, it was fabulous marketing, and it laid in stone the future that was to come with partnerships with famous sportsmen. 2007 marks a very big and important year for the Richard Mille brand. Along with releasing several new models with very unique materials, which they still do until this day, the brand is also inducted into the Fondation de la Haute Horlogerie and joined the ranks of the most prestigious brands committed to high-end watchmaking, such as Parmigiani Fleurier, JLC, Kari Voutilainen, FP Journe, Greubel Forsey, and Groeneveld. In the 10 years or so that have followed until today, 2019 at the time of this video, Richard Mille has come out with many unique watch materials and watch partners with celebrities, most of them sportsmen. The watches have been produced in limited numbers, somewhere to the tune of 30,000 total units produced over the entire course of the brand. One specific watch that stands out in the Mille lineup of sports, avant-garde, racing-inspired pieces is the RM50-03 split-seconds tourbillon chronograph Ultralight Mclaren F1. The watch, produced out of graphene, is said to weigh only an astonishing 1.4 ounces. This would be roughly equivalent to the weight of 7 US quarters. Being that this is a very special material that was being used, upwards of half of the watches produced were rejected by quality control in the Richard Mille workshop. This watch had a price tag of nearly $1 million US. The same can be said about most highly innovative and complicated Richard Mille watches, as with the watch that was just mentioned. In a statement by Mille himself, he says that he actually tests the watches on athletes, practicing before selling them. Rafael Nadal, the tennis player, has broken 5 or 6 watches in testing, he once said. No wonder the watch carries roughly a $720,000 US retail price. The prices of all of the broken watches are wrapped up into the retail price. While we can cover endlessly the list of ultra-rare and desirable Art Nouveau pieces of the Richard Mille line, let's take a look at some of the more approachable models, and I really do mean that relatively speaking. Likely what is the least desirable Richard Mille is the RM16, which we actually had at DelReyWatch.com a few weeks ago. Shameless plug. The specific piece sold in a matter of hours on our site. These retail roughly pre-owned between $50,000 and $60,000 US. The interesting thing about this piece is that it's generally more thin than most RM models on the market. This is because of the non-iconic Richard Mille case, shape, and size. This case is more boxy and rectangular than the other more iconic Richard Mille tonneau cases. That being said, the watch really still does hold true to the brand's style, form, and function, with that iconic skeleton face with raised numbers and a sporty race car, aeronautical-ish design. In traditional-looking Richard Mille, the most desirable approachable model is probably the RM11 chronograph. Launched in 2007, there have been many versions of this watch, though the overall profile has remained the same. The watch featured a Vaucher movement, the same brand that produced movements for brands such as Parmigiani and some of the more high-end Hermes. and it featured a flyback chronograph. To put it into perspective with its notoriety, consider it the Submariner of Richard Mille, if you catch my drift. With the original RM11 being discontinued, they released the RM11-3 to carry on the spirit of the line. I just find it incredible that in less than 20 short years, Richard Mille has captivated the minds of watch geeks, celebrities, businessmen, and royalty alike. Along the way, the brand has stayed entirely and wholeheartedly true to their passion of fitting advanced, award-winning watch movements inside of cases comprised of some of the most advanced materials on the planet. And all of this from a man that claims, "I am not a watchmaker." So, hopefully you found this pretty interesting. I know that I found it interesting just making this video, of course, and refreshing myself on some of these. Pretty crazy how Richard Mille just threw the watch on the floor at his debut at Baselworld, right? I think that's amazing. It's certainly ballsy, for lack of a better term. Hopefully that ballsy word does not get me demonetized on the video. You know how these things go. But please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. If you did not enjoy it and you just enjoyed yourself trolling in the comments below, like and subscribe too, because then you know when there's a new video for you to go at it at your craft. Anyway, guys, let's it's Monday. I gotta get back to work. Have a great week. You have been chatting with John P. Like and subscribe. Ciao.